In chapter 12, we're going to talk about more complicated experiments, experiments where there are at least two different independent variables. And particularly, we're going to look at interactions, which from a psychological perspective is really pretty cool. So we've talked about experiments with one independent variable. So for example, when we're comparing a placebo group with a drunk group, this particular experiment has two levels of the independent variable and two different dependent variables. Those variables are intensity of shock and duration of shock. In this particular second study, Strayer and Drews, they're looking at cell phone, or they have the independent variable cell phone. So either on the cell phone or not on the cell phone. And breaking time is their dependent variable. And in this case, they only have one. Note that in figures, often the independent variable is on the bottom and the dependent variable is on the y-axis. Same thing in terms of both figures. So when we're talking about interactions, we're talking about a difference in differences, so that how different two levels of a independent variable are depends on what's happening with the other independent variable. So the effect of one independent variable depends on the level of the other independent variable. So for example, people don't particularly like ice cream when it's as much when it is when that ice cream is hot, but they like pancakes when it's hot, or when the pancakes are hot. They like cold ice cream, but don't like cold pancakes. How delicious a sandwich is rated depends on whether it has avocado on it. So if there is no bacon, it doesn't particularly matter whether there's avocado on it. But if there's bacon, avocado increases the deliciousness of the sandwich. And it's increased even further if there is also avocado on that sandwich. So we're talking about, we're going to then be talking about two independent variables, or one independent variable and one participant variable. In each case, we're calling this a factorial design. In a factorial design, we have at least two levels of the independent variable. We're going to talk about the cells in our variable. So here's one variable, one independent variable, cell phone, not cell phone. Here's the participant variable, either younger or older drivers, and we can put those into 4 cells, and we'll look at the outcome of those cells. Younger drivers on cell phones, younger drivers not on cell phones, older drivers on cell phones, and older drivers not on cell phones. So here we have that same figure, but in this case, we've actually collected those data, or the data for each. So we know what is happening when we have people on the cell, or younger drivers on the cell phone. They break in about 912 milliseconds. Not on the phone, they break faster, 780 milliseconds. We're seeing 1086 milliseconds for older drivers on the phone, and 912 milliseconds for drivers on the phone or not on the phone. And we can draw this in this way. Notice in this case, we have relatively small error bars. So our groups are significantly different from each other in both directions, both in terms of age, and so age, this bar being significantly higher than this bar, and also in terms of cell phone use here versus here. Okay, and that both factors influence braking speed. So factorial designs identify when and how the independent variable or participant variable affects the dependent variable. So let's look at aggression. What we're really doing is saying, in what groups, in what situations do we see this factor working? And so we're sort of asking about external validity. Where can we generalize to? And so interactions then identify moderators. So when is it this particular way? So, for example, what we have here are, you see our drunk group and our placebo group. Somewhat or light men tend to respond pretty much the same, somewhat more, when drunk, significantly more, or heavy men respond significantly more intense shocks when they're drunk. Now, one of the things you see here is that because we can put either independent variable on the x-axis, and the other variable, in this case, the participant variable, is up here in our bars. So we can use a factorial design to test a theory, as with alcohol cues. So our theory might be alcohol can become cognitively associated with thoughts of aggression. So here is one independent variable, alcohol photos and plant photos. And here's a second, aggression-related words and neutral words. And you see our 2x2 table. The green cells are where we're going to put our data, our means. So again, photo type and word type here. So what we have is our four different we have four different examples of, or four different cells, both photo type and word type. And you can see the means for each cell. And we have here a crossover interaction. You see that there is a crossing here with a lot of overlap, though. So big error bars. And so it's not clear. I'd want to do the statistical test to determine whether, in fact, they are significantly different. Here is another factorial design to test a theory. Our independent variable is chess pieces versus digits. So we can randomly assign those to our participants. We obviously cannot randomly assign whether someone is a child chess expert or an adult novice. That's why this is a participant variable. And here are our data that look like this. This figure actually does not include error bars, but it certainly looks like it is significantly different, in that the interaction is significant. So I'm going to stop here and we'll continue this discussion in the next video. Take care.